And unfortunately, because of all the mistrust issues in the past with our trade, anytime we do go and say to somebody, look, you really need to be replacing all 4 of those tyres. This one's illegal. This one's at 2 millimeters. You've not got long to go before it's on its legal tread depth. We are just seen as, you're just trying to get more money out of us. You're just trying to do this. And so as a garage, that is where we kind of stand, and I'm sure other people will agree with what I'm saying. There's only so far we can go to put the pressure on people to change the tyres.
Hello and welcome everyone to a brand new episode of the Auto Tech Show. My name is Mark Babin, your host, and as always, thank you all so very much for joining me on this episode. And boy, do I have a treat for all of you today. It's not often that we get to pull back the curtain on the automotive servicing industry, but that's exactly what today is going to be all about. Our guest is certainly no stranger to dealing with customers on the front line. As a tire expert at a prominent service center in the UK, Sophie Lyden is also a rapidly growing social influencer in the automotive and driver safety space. She has numerous active campaigns and continuous content that drives home critical road safety tips, from shocking real-world examples of vehicles being serviced to young driver initiatives. Sophie is certainly one to watch in the space, and it's our honor to have her on the show today. Sophie, thank you so very much for your time. I know just in speaking to you before we hit record, you have so much going on in the shop today, which is fantastic. But really looking forward to today's talk, and really anxious as well to hear kind of the stories you have going on behind the scenes. But first and foremost, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to being able to share my stories.
Yeah, I think the stories are incredible. And also, like I said, I'm kind of scared to know the real truth behind what you see in the garage space, the real truth. Exactly. Yeah, so before we get there, I want to give more direct insight into obviously why you got involved with general road and driver safety from that point of vehicle awareness. I think your journey is fantastic. It's a very personal journey that you're on, but it comes through very passionately in your content that you post, in the conversations we've had. But what kind of got you involved in all of this to start with?
So I've been within the motor trade my whole life. Our family business has been going for 27 years now, and I got a lot more involved probably over the past 10 years. So within the 10 years, I've seen all the different changes in the industry and the different things that have been neglected on people's cars. And over kind of the past year, I noticed there was definitely an increase in vehicles being neglected to the point of bolt tires constantly having broken coil springs, broken suspension parts, and so on. And I thought, there's something I kind of really need to do about this and educate people as to what's going on. But I think the real start point for me was when we had a road traffic collision outside the actual garage forecourt, and me and my husband were stood on the forecourt talking to each other, and a lady flipped her car on its roof, and we were first on scene. She'd just been distracted as she was driving, crashed into a parked car. Luckily, she was fine. Everybody else was absolutely fine. But my dad was actually going to get in the other car that she crashed into. So it was a bit of we were so surprised that we didn't expect it all to happen. And since this point, I've actively campaigned for road safety afterwards. And my husband is now a firefighter. So we've both kind of taken a step towards being able to help our community. He's a firefighter on call, which means he comes out of work to basically help save lives. And I use my knowledge within the trade to share the stories of what is actually driving on the road next to you. So that's how I basically started doing what I do.
Wow. So kind of already in the industry to start with, but then of course, having an incident like that happen directly in front of you kind of just wakes you up to go, this is a bigger problem than perhaps I even realized. Is that kind of how it came to you as well?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think you always, in the UK, we all get taught through like primary school up to like a certain part in high school about road safety. We get told that we have to be safe on the roads. But then when I think you come to drive yourself, it's something you probably have in the back of your mind, but you don't always think about it. And then for us to see the fact that they call it the fatal 4 or the fatal 5, where it's either a fatality at the hand of speeding, drug or drink driving, mobile phone use, distracted driving or tiredness. And I think, obviously, it wasn't a fatal, thank goodness, but this was a crash that happened because somebody was distracted by something. So I think because that happened literally in front of us, I was like, oh my God, this is just such a, it's obviously going on all the time. But just because it happened in front of me, I was like, wow, I need to do something about it. And I need to share the awareness, the fact that this is just a 30-mile-an-hour road, but this lady managed to flip a car on its roof. So clearly there was speed involved and clearly there was something else. So by raising this topic and saying it can happen anywhere at any time to anyone, so please be careful when you're out on the road, that's basically, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, it's such a profound way to get into it, but you're right. There's just so much going on, and that's just, that happened in front of your shop. It happens on the minute, every minute somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And I think the education side of it is severely lacking. Was that kind of the thinking behind what you're doing with Fresh Drivers UK? Obviously, this is an organization you started to help reduce that garage anxiety and get young people more educated about their vehicles and about driving. Was that kind of the basis for starting that?
Yeah, so Fresh Drivers UK, I started that in 2018, but I fell pregnant with my first child, kind of put it on the back burner, and then had my second child and thought, I've had my kids now, I'm ready to bring it back to life and do what I wanted to do. And I think when this happened, it made me realise Fresh Drivers UK is clearly, I need to bring it back to life and I need to make people aware. And it isn't just road safety, it's more education for young and new drivers, which is why I call it fresh, because I don't want it to be set to any kind of age group. It's for anybody who's just learning to drive or has just passed the test. And clearly there was kind of a need for just somebody to connect the dots. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve by it. And it seems to be working so far. So
yeah, I was going to ask, having these conversations then with these fresh drivers, no matter where they are in their learning journey, I guess, are you seeing that change happen? Are you seeing them starting to get it and then that have an impact?
Yeah, and I think the positive is because I am a woman in the automotive industry, which is something, obviously we are a minority. So I think when it is a woman that comes to speak to the younger age groups, they're kind of surprised by the fact that it's me, and I'm just normal and I have tattoos and I'm just, I'm not kind of stood there all corporate and professional. I'm just a general human being that's come to basically help them make the right decisions as they start driving. And I think they do respond to it very well. I had a group of 58 students last week that I went to go and speak to. I was only supposed to be 16 students and 58 students came to listen to my talk.
There's your impact, right?
So we basically covered basics of vehicle maintenance, what they kind of need to be keeping an eye on when they start driving, how to check their tyres when they start driving. And the first thing I started off the talk was, I'm not a member of the authority. I'm not here to tell you how to drive, but what I'm here to do is tell you about things that have happened because of these circumstances and hope that you make the best decisions when you start to drive. And I honestly, they were so lovely. It was mainly male in the room, and a few female because they were construction students. And the response I got back from it, they were so engaged. They wanted to talk to me afterwards. They wanted to show me what cars they were getting. They wanted to ask questions. And I think I just thought, wow, it is clear that sometimes I think when I do what I do, is there any point in me doing it? Because is anybody actually listening to me? And then when I did this talk, I was like, wow, that was 58 students who've actually enjoyed my talk. They've actually enjoyed listening to me. I've given something for them to hopefully will keep them safe when they start driving. And yeah, I just came out of it really positive. So
I think you have to. I mean, you have to think of the number, like even that talk alone, the long-term impact of that, the amount of potential incidents that you've just, averted because of that talk. You've made them aware of it. That 58 is going to turn to 100 in no time. And it's just going to continue to go. I think it's a fantastic initiative that you've taken upon yourself to do. And More people should definitely pay attention to it. And I think, even those listening, if you have that group, I think it's definitely worth reaching out to Sophie to have that conversation, because the education is lacking. If people are that engaged that fast from such an authentic point of view, I think that's huge. So yeah, big up on you for doing that. That's fantastic. So I know you run lots of social campaigns. Anyone that's seen you online will know that. They've seen all the videos of, it's fantastic content. When you come to that service and safety side of things. But aside from that, as you mentioned, you also work for Family Run Service Garage in the UK. So you're on the front line when it comes to a lot of the road incidents and the car conditions and the tire conditions that you see. So getting to some of that, I'd love to hear some of those untold stories that you come across, likely on a daily basis. And I'm sure we're just going to scratch the surface of the things you see. But of course, you have conversations with customers. You have vehicles come in certain conditions, as you touched on a little bit earlier. A lot of things that probably could have been avoided maintenance-wise, accident-wise, cost-wise, based on stuff that you've seen. So I'd love to hear some of these stories that you have from the shop.
Oh, where do I start? So we are obviously a service centre that does predominantly tyres. That's how we first started off. Mm-hmm. And my dad, I don't know if everybody will remember the Max Power days. I don't know if you can get Max Power magazine or how it was. It was all big body kits, lights underneath, wheels, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that's how Westgate Tyres started. My dad was one person in his little shop. And Then he progressed to we have 3 depots now. It's all in the same place, but we're just spread across the street, basically. Mm-hmm. And the main issue we see is definitely tyres, to the point where they are literally down to the laminate, down to the canvas. And we had one like 2 weeks ago, and they came in and he said, "I've got a puncture." We're like, "Right, yeah, okay, that's fine." So we took the tyre off, and it was literally, I'm surprised it was even anything holding it together. Jeez. It was so bold. It was unbelievable. It had gone past the rubber. It was literally like the spongy bit. When you push it, it's like the canvas. Oh my gosh. And we said to him, "Your tyre's bald." "No, it's not. No, it's not." So I got the tyre and I showed him. I was like, "It's completely bald." "Oh, I only came in for a puncture. Can you not just fix it?" So I think we struggle with kind of like the people, like I said, there's like a lack of education because they don't understand the importance of a tyre. Mm-hmm. Like, it's 4 hand sizes, 4 postcard sizes, 4 hands on the floor, and that carries the whole weight of your car, that carries you, that keeps your family safe. And if that small space has 0 tread on it, you're not going to stop. No. You're going to put yourself at risk, and you're going to put families at risk too. And I think the other things we see is like brakes, to the point of literally no return. And sometimes it is at the hands of the vehicle owner, but then other times it is at the hands of bad workmanship by other garages, which unfortunately is something that happens in this trade quite a bit. Which then leads to the whole garage anxiety side, which we talked about before, because people have probably had a previous experience with another garage where they've kind of, had a service that they've not been happy with. So then they avoid going anywhere. So then we see further neglect on people's cars. And definitely due to the cost of living crisis, we've seen a lot of it where the cars are just literally, "I'll just have anything done when I have my MOT done," but then it leads to £800-900 bill because they've literally left every single thing possible for the MOT for it to fail, that then needs fixing at that time just so they can drive the car again. And I mean, the roads around Morecambe at the moment are absolutely horrendous. We are full of potholes. We are full of everything you can imagine. So we're having so many kind of blowouts, we're having so many recoveries brought to us, and it leads to like the broken coil springs that we get. We had a gentleman be about 3 months ago now. He came in for 2 tyres, which they were like bald, and he had a broken coil spring. And we said to him, rather than you putting the tyres on the car, why don't you put the coil spring on, because it's the same price as the 2 tyres, and then come back to us next week when you can afford to have the 2 tyres. They weren't illegal, but they were getting to the point where they needed replacing.
But the suspension, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. So then we said to him, look, just get the coil spring fixed and leave the tyres, come back next week. So he said, no, I want the tyres doing. I'm not having the coil spring. It doesn't need doing. We showed him it was snapped. Still didn't get it done. And then the next day, he wanted the tyres doing. So we did the tyres because, the customer, that's what the customer wants. So we just did it. The next day, I don't know if it was karma or what, he was driving past the garage, and as he drove past the garage, the coil spring snapped and popped one of his brand new tyres. I shouldn't laugh, but we said to him, we had to recover the car from literally across the road to us, which we then had to fix. The coil spring that we'd told him already, and a new tyre, because the new tyre he just had fitted was popped. And he went, I should have just listened to you yesterday, shouldn't I? Yes, you should. So... yeah, there's so many stories I could probably tell you. I mean, I could probably be on here for like 4 hours.
Absolutely.
But probably more.
But it seems like a lot of this is, and that's one of the questions I have. It's such a complex, like even just those examples you gave, there's so many variables at play that make them such a complex issue of how do you even solve this? It's the stubbornness of the customer, the cost of things. You can't ignore the cost of things, like you said, with the price of living. There's the lack of faith and trust in technicians because of previous experiences, or again, it comes back to that stubbornness of, nope, I want to do this. You can't tell me any different, right? And then later on, as you just said, I should have listened to you, but obviously should have, would have, could have. 2020 is the vision behind us. So how do you navigate that? That's incredibly complex. Obviously, you're trying to establish a relationship of trust with customer. You're not taking that approach of just one tire's gone, you need all 4, or, you're taking the most logical and customer appreciative steps, but you're balancing and trying to go up against all these different variables. How do you even accomplish that?
I don't know. It's quite tricky, to be honest. If anybody says that in this trade they enjoy it and it's completely stress-free, then they are lying to you, because we always say we get to the point where we're sick of fighting fires, because one thing happens, we sort that out, then the next thing happens and we sort that out. So I think, like you say, I honestly don't know how would you accomplish fixing every single problem that there is. But I guess if you just take it one step at a time, then, I always advise people to maybe stick towards the kind of independent garages, just because we are families. We are so appreciative of any business that we get. You tend to get more of a trustworthy and service. I'm not trying to stop anyone from going to fast fits or the big chains, but sometimes, unfortunately for them, there's so many people in their chains that when it gets to the garage side that they actually go and see this member of staff, sometimes that member of staff's probably just at the point where they really can't be bothered anymore. They're frustrated with all the different, HR, blah, blah, blah kind of thing. And it gets to a point where they probably don't provide the service that they should be providing. So I had a lady, just for example, come in to me last week, and she'd been to a certain chain for a winter tyre check. And they told her, she said it took them about 15 minutes, which on average probably is about 15, 20 minutes to do a winter check. She came to us the next day because she'd had a blowout on the motorway, and she was from down south, so she'd come to us because she was just on her way up somewhere else. And the tyres that they'd let her drive away were completely bald.
Come on.
And she had it in writing. A winter check had been carried out and that her tyres were completely safe. So from my point of view, it's very difficult to fix all these issues when you constantly have big names still kind of doing this to customers. And, women customers especially, I don't know what it is, but we seem to, I think as a women customer, as a female, they kind of think that we don't know what we're talking about, but most females now feel empowered to learn more about the cars. They want to come in and know what they're talking about. So I think when they kind of put a bit of extra percentage on there because they think that we're just going to pay it, it's kind of wrong thing to do, because a female's probably going to have worked that out, and then they're not going to want to buy anything off you, so they're going to come away and they're going to go use somewhere else. I think, It's very difficult.
Yeah,
it's very
I understand.
difficult.
It's a difficult thing to put your finger on. Do you feel like there's a single like common thread or denominator to the issues you see? Is it, if you had to put the majority of the things you see into one bucket of consistency, do you think it's the cost thing? Do you think it's the transparency and the trust with the service advisors? Do you feel like it's just stubbornness? Where do you think is the most common thread in what you see come into the shop on a daily basis?
I think it's the mistrust in the service advisors, if that makes sense. I think obviously I'm a service advisor myself, but I feel like I'm so transparent with the customer. I'd be completely honest if there was something that I thought they could go and get done easier themselves than coming to us. We would usually just kind of do that. And I know it sounds stupid because you send money away,
But
but
a relationship.
at the same time, that people then come back again because they've trusted what you said the first time. So
that trust is really the challenge you're trying to address. So I will get to that because I think that's a really important topic and one that I want to talk a bit more about with you, that accountability side of things. On the topic of the tires, obviously we just mentioned a lot of bald tires and in the discussion there. I came across a survey, and I think you guys were part of the survey, so you may be aware of the stat, but I want to just throw it your way and get kind of your initial opinion on it. This was a 2023 UK study done by Tyre. They did a survey of more than 500,000 tires. They obviously used different shops and things to collect all this information, but they discovered that there are 17% of all tires that they measured were illegal, well below the minimum tread depth being 1.6 millimeters. For our American friends, that's 2/32 of an inch. So 70% were below that number. And what's even worse is more than half, 57% of all the tires they measured, so around 300,000 tires, were 2 millimeters or below. So on the edge of being legal, certainly no traction in any wet weather condition. And that's more than half of what they measured. So if that's representative of, say, the UK in this study, that means one of every 2 cars you see on the road is driving on dangerous tires. What's your reaction to that statistic?
Doesn't surprise me. But then I see what we take off every single day. And I think if the general public probably read that, they probably wouldn't see an issue with it, because I feel like they're kind of switched off to anything to do with it.
Interesting.
They would probably go on, sorry.
No, go ahead. I think that's interesting that you think that way.
Yeah, so I think just when I go out and speak to people all the time, the way that they think about the tires on their car is kind of, they don't get why there's such an issue. And I know when I post things on social media, and I post things on obviously Fresh Drivers UK, but I also post things on my personal Instagram. And I'll post like, this tire's been taken off today. This has been driving on the same roads as you and your family and your children in your car. And people are like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And I'm like, this is just one tire of about 20 that we've taken off today that have been ridiculously, like, to the point of no return. And they're so shocked by one. But I always say to people, if you came and worked with me for a day and saw the tires that we take off, you'd probably be like, oh my God, it actually is so bad. Do you know, like, they can't understand why a bald tire affects your car. They don't understand. And it's just purely because people who aren't, say, interested in cars, or maybe they just don't want to know, because they know that it costs them money, that they probably should be looking after it, but they've got better things to think about. And it's to them, it's just irrelevant because they want to spend the money elsewhere. So being able to just ignore it and not worry about it is why we're seeing so much of the increase in the bald tires.
So then on that fact, then who owns the responsibility of bringing that information forward? This comes back to that accountability side. Obviously, you're in a shop. Your job is to take care of people's vehicles and educate them when you get the chance, and make sure that the vehicles that leave your shop are in the safest condition possible, given that customers, obviously, they're the ones pulling out the pocketbook at the end of the day. So you're trying to find the best means for them. So that's your level of accountability. The driver has an accountability for being on the roadway in their own vehicle, responsible for whatever happens. But this is incredibly complex when we look at, like, who owns the ultimate accountability of making sure that these numbers don't get worse. I mean, 57% driving on a tire that shouldn't have no business being on the road. How does that number lower? Is it the accountability of the shops and you guys, or is it the majority of the accountability on the drivers themselves to pull their head out of the ground and realize this is a bigger issue?
I think as a garage, as the shops ourselves, there's only so much we can do. And unfortunately, because of all the mistrust issues in the past with our trade, anytime we do go and say to somebody, look, you really need to be replacing all 4 of those tyres. This one's illegal. This one's at 2 millimeters. You've not got long to go before it's on its legal tread depth. We are just seen as, you're just trying to get more money out of us. You're just trying to do this. And so as a garage, that is where we kind of stand, and I'm sure other people will agree with what I'm saying. There's only so far we can go to put the pressure on people to change the tyres. So by educating them and saying to them, like, look, this is what your tyre looks like. This is, as far as where it should lie, like who takes responsibility, it is the vehicle owner. And I really think, we were talking about it in the garage the other day with my sister and my dad, and we were saying, if you get caught speeding in this country, even if it's 3 or 4 miles per hour over, you are given points and a fine, or you are offered a speed awareness course, which completely agree with, you should not exceed the speed limit. Mm-hmm. However, if you are caught with bald tyres, you get, which is rare because there seems to be I think no offence to the police in this country, but it just seems to be where there's no risk for people anymore. People would drive on bald tyres, they don't really care because they think, I'm never going to get caught anyway. But why do we not have it where they have to get points and a fine, or they get offered a tyre education awareness course, and awareness to the point of, this is what you could have done if you'd have carried on driving with your tyres. This is what you could have caused. Why do we not do that? So I really don't know where the responsibility lies, because it seems to be such a grey area. There's only so many things that people like us, like Tyre Safe themselves, can do. We keep banging the same drum. We keep talking about tyre safety and vehicle maintenance and so on and so on and so on. But until other, say, regulations or anything like that come into place, I don't honestly think it's going to change. I just think we get to a point where, what do we do and how do we stop it? Because it's been like this for years now. And I think I only see more and more of it because I'm actively looking for it, because I'm trying to make a change. And there's garages that I work with now who posted pictures 10 years ago on the same topic, and there's still the same issue now. There's still the same quality of tyres that are coming off people's cars. So I honestly couldn't tell you who the responsibility lies with, but I think at least if some people are trying to make a change, it might just raise that bit of awareness.
So do you feel like, with, obviously we're in an age where technology is reigning supreme and solutions in the automotive space are advancing like extremely rapidly, and I'm sure you see that in the garage as well, the different tools that your technicians and that you're able to use to conduct services better, faster, more efficient, and so on and so forth. Do you feel like if there was a way to increase the transparency between the condition of the vehicle, like you mentioned, if someone could come and see what you see every day, they would get it. It would click in their head that, okay, this is actually serious. If you had an ability, or if shops had the ability to make that connection with people through the use of technology, do you feel like that would have a positive impact on a lot of this stuff?
I think to get people to take more care of their cars, I think being more transparent with them would work. And I think that being able to show them what's going on with people's cars constantly on the roads at the same time as what they're driving on, it would make them maybe think twice about their conditions. But referring to kind of what technology, I'm guessing, do you mean like a kind of being able to show people through like video recording kind of thing?
Yeah, maybe like digital vehicle inspection type things, or even reports that are non-ambiguous and not opinion based. Like if you were to go, collect the information from someone's tire and then you have the factual data, not just an opinion, then it's not a matter of, well, that's what you think, right? It's fact. Yeah. And then it educates them on the fact that this is actually what the situation is with your car and this is why it's unsafe. I mean, people will still have to make the decision of, well, I don't think that's unsafe, and that's unavoidable. But removing you're an advisor, you deal with the people, removing that opinion-based, I can think would increase the trust faster with people, because then it's not just hearsay. Do you feel like that would help?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there is some technology that we have in the garage now which kind of does that. So what you're saying, I get that, because obviously when we're in the garage, we kind of maybe don't use tools because we're just so fast paced. We look, we're like, well, that's bold. Sure. Can you see this? Can you see this? And then I think people are like, right, okay, yeah. Whereas I guess using things like the stuff that we have, it just gets to the point where you get no time.
Absolutely. I think that's the challenge you have, is maybe the tools exist, but they're not as efficient as you need them to be, or the value is not truly there. Like, yeah, if you have to go spend the time to do something and then you have to show them that, it's a lot more steps to get them to that point. But if there were something that you would be able to, instantly do and not disrupt the flow, I guess that's where the gap lies, and that's what would help, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have looked at putting the drive over tread depth scanners, because I think you don't waste any time with them. You just drive over them, don't you? But
they're
again,
heavy cost.
It implicates the cost, and then you have to work out as to whether that is worth doing, as to what money we're making. And I mean, at the moment in the garage industry, automotive industry, we're up against so many rising costs that sometimes it gets to the point where we're like, well, what are we still doing it for? Because you have your wage bills, you've got equipment bills, you've got overheads, everything else. So I think we have looked at doing stuff. We've definitely looked at improving equipments and things like that in our garage. But sometimes it gets to the point where it's like, can we really afford it? Can we really justify it when somebody could literally just go out and look at it? And we deal with it every single day, every hour of every day. We know what we're looking for. So yeah, we have looked at stuff like that before, but
it's the balance, practicality versus efficiency, and then versus what that efficiency gets you. I guess it comes down to the motivation of where you're at business wise. If you're so busy that you can't even catch yourself, then I totally understand that's a balance to have. But if you in general, do you feel like that transparency would help to bridge the gap? I guess the answer is yes.
100%. My dream with our garage is to turn it into like a Domino's shop. That sounds really random, but over in the UK, we have the Domino's shops. We go in, you sit there, and there's basically a screen, and it says like in progress, cooking, finished. Okay. My idea has always been with the garage for years to turn our waiting room into something quite similar. So as a car's say driving into the shop, have one of those like tread depth drive over scanners where it comes up and it says registration, and then it'll pop up on the screen to say this is the condition of your tires, blah blah blah, here's a QR code to scan to keep for later.
I love it.
There's like all different ideas that I have, but again, it's cost, and it's whether what kind of equipment and what technology there's going to be available in say like 3 or 4 years, 5 years maybe, when I do fully take over. So my ideas at the moment are current to this situation, but in say 5 years time it could be completely different.
That's it. Things change so fast.
Yeah.
And to drop money on hardware that's single use is a commitment, and with the way technology is advancing, maybe commitment in the wrong direction.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting though. Like I said, I think there's so many different variables at play when we look at how services get done to people's vehicles, and you're navigating it the best you can in the condition that you have. And I think a lot of garages and operators are fighting that same battle. But as long as we progressively move things forward, and that's why I love the work that you're doing, separate from the garage, even with the garage, educating customers, obviously, but all the initiatives that you do outside of it, to increase that education factor with the Fresh Drivers UK, I think is a fantastic program for that. But then also, I mean, the social stuff you post is so enlightening. And you mentioned it as well earlier on, how it's fact. It's right there. Look at this tire. We just pulled off this car. This was on the road with you. Like it hits people in a different way. And I think the louder that message can be, the better. And that's why I think this is such an important conversation to have.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, listen, I think this has been great. We could literally talk for hours, like you said, on all the stuff you deal with, but I think you gave us a nice glimpse behind the curtain, which is exactly what I wanted to do, and just let people know what's really going on the roadways and help to raise awareness for that. So yeah, for that, a massive thank you for being able to share that and share some of your insights and your feelings on a lot of this stuff. Super insightful for me and hopefully for the audience as well. So I'm very, very thankful. Before we wrap up the show, any final notes from your side that you wanna share?
Probably just to anybody listening to make sure you make the correct choices when you get behind the wheel of your car or your truck, SUV, whichever you drive, even if it's a motorbike. Always make sure you're being safe, always drive to the speed limits, and make sure your car, bike, SUV, truck, whatever it is roadworthy, and you have tread on your tyres, because it's okay when you get in your car to go from A to B, but you have to think about everybody else. And if you're carrying special cargo like children or family members, you wouldn't want anything to happen to them. So please be safe and make the right decisions. Absolutely. Not to mention who you're out on the road with and the families that may be in those vehicles as well. Exactly. Yeah, own the responsibility and own the accountability of what's going on with your car. Your tires touch the road. It's the most important part of your car, whether you like it or not, and take care of them. I think that's a fantastic message. Sophie, thank you so very much again for this talk. I really, really appreciate it, and wish you and the team in the UK the best end to the winter. Hopefully, I know you're going to get right back to servicing cars after this. So, literally, yeah, like not even a joke, quite literally. I'm literally sat in my front room now, and I'm about to put my shoes and go straight back over to the garage. Well, listen, have a great day. Be safe out there, and continue to do what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. Can I also say, if anyone has social media, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and it's at Fresh Drivers UK. And I also have a LinkedIn, which is Sophie Lyden. So if anybody wants to connect on there and ask any questions, any advice, anything like that, I've been more than welcome to. Perfect. A final great message. And I think lots of people will. Absolutely. Sophie, again, thank you so much for today. Thank you so much. And for all of you listening and watching to this episode, thank you very much for joining me on this episode and getting a lot of great insights behind that curtain of the automotive service industry. Lots to take home, lots to learn, lots to look into yourself. You know, next time you go to your vehicle, check the condition of your tire. If you don't know what you're looking for, head to your local garage. They'll be more than happy to help you. And just get yourself educated on this factor. It's super important. If you have anything that you want to further talk about on this episode, questions, comments, as Sophie mentioned, there lots of socials to follow and get in touch with. We'll put them all in the podcast notes below. So just head down below, click on them, check out some of Sophie's videos. They're really enlightening and quite eye-opening. And as well, reach out to myself if you have any questions about what you heard today or you want to add to the conversation. We'd love to have that. So with that, we'll bring this episode to a close. Wishing you all a fantastic day wherever you may be in the world. Stay safe on the road, and we'll see you on the next episode very soon. Bye for now.